Shalom, it's Tila from the Kifar. I've been teaching Hebrew online since 2015, and I also help teachers teach language online. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 6 strategies that you can use to correct language learner errors. So you'll probably already be familiar with a few, and hopefully you'll be able to add a few more to your toolbox because all of them are useful and even ideal in different situations, depending on your learners, on the context, or the type of speech error that's made. So you'll probably find that you'll use most or all of these as you teach. And so we'll go through each strategy, define it briefly, and then I will give you an example. And so the first strategy is elicitation, and it's when you as the teacher prompt the learner to correct him or herself. So you are essentially eliciting the correction from them as opposed to providing it yourself. Okay, and the answers here are in English, but of course you will adapt it to whatever language it is that you teach. So as an example, the learner will say, yesterday I go to class. And as the teacher, you say, yesterday you, and between your body language or your facial expression, which is easy to see online, and also the tone of voice, it sends a message to the learner that there was an error there and there's something that they need to correct. Another strategy is explicit correction. So this is when you correct the error directly as opposed to elicitation, which is where you give the student an opportunity to correct it themselves. So as an example, if we have the same sentence, the learner says, yesterday I go to class, and you say not go, went. Yesterday you went to class. Okay, so you're again explicitly correcting that mistake. The next strategy is metalinguistic feedback. And this is when you reply to the learner mistake with information or a question. And so it's somewhat similar to elicitation, but you're providing a little bit more of a hint. So when you use elicitation, maybe your facial expression and your tone of voice is what's hinting to the student that they made a mistake that they need to correct. With metalinguistic feedback, you're drawing attention directly to the error without correcting it. So again, the learner says, yesterday I go to class. So you might say, how do we say go in the past tense, or call their attention to maybe something that you learned earlier that day or in the previous lesson. So asking question or dropping little bits of information that make it clear what the error is, but still allows the student the opportunity to correct the error themselves. The next strategy is recasting. And when you recast, you rephrase what the learner says. And in rephrasing it, you are stating it correctly. So the learner says, yesterday I go to class, and you say, oh, you went to class yesterday, or yesterday you went to class. How was it? Or you may ask another question. And so with recasting, you may find that it works really well with some students or really well in certain classes. And in other classes, they need something that's a little bit more direct, because if you rephrase the statement correctly, some students may not actually pick up on the difference between what you said and what they said. And so they won't actually learn from that error or recognize that they made an error at all. Another strategy is repetition. And repetition is similar to recasting, but it's not quite the same thing. So when you recast, you're rephrasing the statement and correcting the error in the process, but you're not really drawing a lot of attention to the error that you corrected. With repetition, you're restating exactly what it is the student said, but you're correcting the error and you are emphasizing that correction. So we have the yesterday I go to class, and the teacher says, yesterday I went to class. Okay, so it's not a rephrasing where we do with recasting, where she says, oh, you went to class, where here it's just a direct repetition of what the student says, but correcting that mistake with some emphasis so that it's clear that you're making a correction to what the student said. And the last strategy is a clarification request. And with a clarification request, you are essentially asking the student to clarify by indicating somehow that you didn't understand. What do you mean? Or I don't understand. And the idea is that based on your response, the student will realize that they made a mistake, realize what the mistake is, and be able to fix it. Okay, so similar to elicitation in that way, where before you provide correction or even an additional hint on how to correct it, like with metalinguistic feedback, you're giving them an opportunity to recognize they made a mistake, identify the mistake, and fix it. Okay, and so no one strategy is better than the other. They're all appropriate in different ways at different times. You may also find that you'll use one strategy right after the other. For example, if a clarification request or elicitation doesn't work, you might follow up with metalinguistic feedback or maybe even an explicit correction. And that's just one example. Recast and of course repetition has its place in the online language classroom as well. Okay, so just to recap, a clarification request is when you reply to what it is that the student says and indicate that you don't understand to give them an opportunity to repeat what they said and hopefully correct their error. Repetition is when you repeat exactly what the learner says, but you correct their mistake with some emphasis so that it's clear what it is that you're correcting. Recast is what you restate what the learner says, but you do it in an indirect way to correct their mistake. Metalinguistic feedback is when you ask a question or provide some information that's related to the error that the learner made and in helping them fix it. Explicit correction is when you explicitly correct the mistake. In elicitation, you're repeating what they said, but you're pausing before the error and giving them an opportunity to, again, identify and correct their own mistake. Okay, so that is all for today's video, 6 strategies that you can use to correct language learner errors. Toda la tzfiya, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if there are other topics you'd like for me to address in future videos, let me know that as well. If you're interested in learning more about teaching language online, go to thekafar.com/teachinglanguageonline. Check out these featured videos, and I will see you for the next video. Leitraot.